My name is Alex Carter, and this is the story that almost cost me my life. I used to be a journalist for the Daily Globe, one of the most respected investigative papers in Europe. Used to be because of a case I picked up last year. A case no one dared to talk about. It was the kind of story journalists dream of. A mass murder in 1987 at St. Mary's Convent, located in a remote village in Italy. 12 nuns were slaughtered in a single night. Their bodies were found in the chapel, mutilated in ways no one dared to describe in detail. The investigation was abruptly shut down by the Vatican, and any reports about it vanished from public records. I stumbled upon the story while combing through old police records for another piece. It was a small note in a long-forgotten file. Details of the massacre, a brief mention of strange circumstances, and an abrupt end to the investigation. My instincts told me something bigger was at play. I started digging into church records, old police reports, and even local rumors. After days of searching, I tracked down the sole survivor of the massacre, Sister Isabella. Now a frail, elderly nun, she was living in a small, church-run nursing home. That evening, after discovering her whereabouts, I returned home to find my apartment ransacked. Papers were scattered everywhere, my desk drawers were pulled out, and my notes on the St. Mary's case, days' worth of work, were gone. But what remained was far more disturbing. Sitting on the table, where my files had been, there was a cursed-like pendant, a grotesque ornament. Faint, sinister inscriptions were scratched into its surface. My stomach churned at the sight. I felt a chilling certainty. Someone was watching me and didn't want me to meet Sister Isabella. I called the police, hoping they'd take it seriously. But as soon as I mentioned the missing files were related to St. Mary's Convent, everything changed. The officer in charge became evasive, his face pale. "I think this is out of our jurisdiction," he muttered before leaving my apartment with the others. Left alone, I threw the pendant into a dustbin and spent hours cleaning up. But I made one critical mistake. I forgot to take the bin outside. That night, strange things began to happen. The lights flickered sporadically, and the air in my apartment grew thick and oppressive. Shadows shifted in the corners of my vision, but when I turned, nothing was there. Faint tapping sounds echoed through the walls, like someone or something trying to get my attention. I didn't sleep. The next day, my editor called me into his office. He told me to drop the story. "You're poking the wrong bear, Alex," he warned. "This isn't some local corruption case. You're dealing with the church, the Vatican. Let it go." When I refused, I was fired the next day. My credentials were revoked, and my name was blacklisted in every major newsroom. Despite everything, I met with Sister Isabella. After much persuasion, she agreed to tell me what happened that night, on the condition that I kept her identity safe. "They came during the prayer hour," she whispered. "Dressed as priests. We thought they were from the Vatican, here for an inspection. They slaughtered everyone in the chapel. I only survived because I was in the storage room, fetching candles." I asked if she had seen who was responsible. She shook her head. "Not at first," she said. "But when I went to the chapel, Sister Maria was still alive. Barely." She grabbed my arm and whispered, "They came dressed as priests, but their eyes, black as death." Her voice cracked as she continued. "Sister Maria told me just before she passed. The journal, Mother Superior's journal, she wrote about the box, about what they found under the church. It's behind the cross in her study. Go. It might tell you how to end this." I left the nursing home, my mind racing with the horrifying details she'd shared. But when I returned home, things escalated. The pendant was back, lying on the floor where I'd thrown it. The noises grew louder, the shadows darker, more vivid. Sleep was impossible. The next morning, Sister Isabella and I planned to visit the ruins of St. Mary's Convent. Overgrown with vines and forgotten by time, the chapel still bore traces of the horror that had unfolded there. We ventured deeper into the ruins and found it beneath the broken altar, a stone box bound with rusted iron chains engraved with Latin prayers. Sister Isabella began reciting the rosary as I examined it. But the moment I touched the box, the air turned icy. A guttural voice echoed through the chapel, low and menacing. "You were warned." Shadows coalesced into a monstrous figure, its eyes black voids of death. It towered over us, its form writhing like smoke. Frantically, I flipped through the journal and found a passage describing a prayer of exorcism. As I shouted the words, the figure shrieked, its form twisting violently before vanishing into the ether. The pendant in my pocket burned hot, then crumbled into ash. We buried the ashes of the pendant and the box in the convent grounds and left without looking back. Sister Isabella passed away weeks later. I left journalism for good and now work at the nursing home where she lived. It's a quieter life, but I'm haunted by what I saw that night. The story of St. Mary's remains untold until now. Even as I write this, I feel the shadows creeping closer. And I wonder, did we destroy the curse or merely delay the inevitable?